Yeah, facts. Insurance. Insurance. Yes. That was the code for the meaning. Kabumba. shi ne nake wuri.
in ji wannan wai a zaɓa public ne da kai maka gwada ka duba ka zaɓa public something wai shi ne yanzu yana ɗan yi zai ji kai ka tuna baka rubuta muka
No, ina kudi ya yi yawa.
kudin yaya
Don yi ina yawa. Kudi ya yi yawa da yawa.
ka sa ne cap ka da ka cinye da shi
Ina son yi. Ai wannan abu ma sun ba mu limited. Na da gani fara life cycle. Bagin shi da waya.
Kuma ya ce ka kira kai magana shi.
Kan shi tuwa ne. Ya ce wai zai zo.
wasu na da wani
Ba magana shi.
Ina yin magana da shi ma shekarun jiya ba ya ce zai zo. Amma ba san koya ba. Ranar kira jiya mai doka waya. Ya ce wani zai representing nation.
Yawa mun ce kwata after sai zo rana. Tunda shi speed na shi ma ta karshe.
so mene a advice da zaka bayyana
Cikin ma benga ya ce Wi-Fi.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we are going to commence this summit. May I request that we rise for the national anthem. We are going to be singing it. Arise, O compatriots, Nigeria's own to serve our fatherland with love and strength and faith. The labor of our heroes past shall never be in vain. To serve with heart and mind, one nation bound in freedom, peace and unity. Thank you. You may have your seat. Our special guest of honor and Chairman, Independent National Electoral Commission, the Acting Director General, National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, the National Chairman, Inter-Party Advisory Council, National Chairman of Political Parties here present, State Chairpersons of IPAC, the Project Coordinator, European Center for Electoral Support, ECES, all EU-SDGN implementing partners here present, Chairman of Sessions and distinguished panelists, principal officers and senior staff of the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies present, participants of this summit, members of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. We have gathered here for the 2021 Annual Summit of Political Parties and Stakeholders. This is the third of this kind of summit. The first was in 2018, and then 2020, and this one. The theme for this year's summit is Political Parties and Democratic Stability in Nigeria, setting agenda for the 2023 general elections. As we are aware, this summit is a platform for political parties to build consensus and a common understanding of their expectations in sustainable democracy in Nigeria. And this year's summit particularly aims at appraising democratic stability in Nigeria as we prepare for 2023. I am Dr. Jacob Sado from the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, and I'm privileged to have a team of facilitators, including Professor Shola Adeyanju and Mrs. Seken Dogari, all from the National Institute. Now, we are the opening ceremony of this very important summit. Everyone here is distinguished and special. However, you permit me to recognize a few individuals who preside over this opening ceremony. Our special guest of honor is the Chairman, Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, who is to be represented by Dr. Adekunle Ogumola, National Commissioner from the INEC headquarters. Is he around yet? He will join us, but you may clap for him in absentia. May I invite to the high table the Acting Director General of the National Institute, Brigadier General CFJ Udaya, retired, PLLC Daga, MNI. Our keynote speaker is a distinguished professor, Professor Eosa E. Osage, is the Director General, Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. You're welcome, sir. And he's here with his lovely wife. Madam, you're welcome. I have the honor to invite to the high table the National Chairman, Interparty Advisory Council, IPAC, Dr. Leonard Nzewa. Please encourage him with a round of applause. We have in our midst the Project Coordinator, European Center for Electoral Support, ECES, Hamza Fassi Firi. You're welcome. Okay, the opening session is going to be brief and to the point. I will now invite the Acting Director General of the National Institute to bring the goodwill message. Acting Director.
Our special guest of honor, ably represented by Electoral Commissioner, our special guest speaker, keynote speaker, Professor Eosa Osage, the Director General, Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, the Chairman, Interparty Advisory Council, Dr. Leonard Nzewa, Chairman of political parties here present, the Program Coordinator, EU-SDGN, State Chairpersons of IPAC here present, Project Coordinator, European Center for Electoral Support, Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to welcome all our guests this evening on behalf of the Governing Board, Management and Staff of the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, Kuru, to the 2021 All Political Parties Summit, organized by the Political Parties Leadership and Policy Development Center of the National Institute. I truly and sincerely appreciate all of you for honoring our invitation. Permit me, therefore, to welcome our special guest of honor. He's yet to come, but I'm sure he's on his way. The National Institute acknowledges him and the good work that he's doing. And it's our prayer that God will grant him the grace and wisdom as we prepare for the Anambra State election and all other off-season elections, and in particular, the 2023 general elections. It is equally a great pleasure to also recognize in our midst an erudite distinguished scholar, the Director General, Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, Professor Ehoza Osage. I want to thank him very much for accepting to deliver the keynote address at this summit. Thank you very much. Let me welcome distinguished national chairmen of political parties here present, academics, European Union support to democratic governance in Nigeria, implementing partners, members of civil society organizations here present, our resource persons, and friends of the National Institute, and all our dignitaries and guests to this very important summit. May I place on record our appreciation to the Director of International Cooperation, Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Elizabeth Haraba, for all the support to the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies in the implementation of the European Union Sustainable Democratic Governance in Nigeria. I recognize the Inter-Party Advisory Council National Chairman, Dr. Leonard Nzewen, and his national executives, as well as all the state and the federal capital territory IPAC chairpersons. The National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies has enjoyed a very good relationship with IPAC since the establishment of the Political Parties Leadership and Policy Development Center at the Institute to enhance the capacities of leaders of political parties. The National Institute recognizes the effort of IPAC in providing a platform for political parties' engagement and promoting inter-party dialogue since 2013. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the National Institute wants to reiterate the significance of political parties in democratic governance, and specifically in ensuring stability of the polity and national integration. It is emphatic that the strength of political parties and party system determines the success of democracy. It is based on this at the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies Political Party Leadership Policy and Development Center, since its establishment in 2013, has been engaging with functionaries of political parties to strengthen their capacities. NIPSS-PPLPDC, with the support of the EU-SDGN, has since 2018 been engaging with political parties for the purposes of promoting pluralism, tolerance, internal democracy, and the quality of political parties and the political party. Some of the specific objectives of this collaboration include to enhance internal democracy and respect for rules in political parties, to strengthen adherence to legal requirements on party funding and campaign finance, to strengthen engagement among inter-party advisory councils, Independent National Electoral Commission, and other relevant stakeholders, and to enhance the involvement of women, youth, and persons with disabilities in political parties and the political process. In pursuance of these objectives, the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, PPLPDC, with the support of the European Union, SDGN, has engaged political parties, particularly through conduct of capacity building activities, observation of political parties' behavior before, during, and after elections. The exercise has provided opportunity for the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies to observe the conduct of political parties as regards issues such as party primaries, conventions, campaigns, inclusivity, adherence to the code of conduct of political parties and other legal frameworks for elections, the conduct of party campaigns and the elections. This was necessary for the purpose of assessing the impact of the activities organized for functionaries of political parties by the PPLPDC. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this summit with the theme Political Parties and Democratic Stability in Nigeria, setting agenda for 2023 general election, is very apt as it sets the tone for discussion of a very important event in the life of our dear nation. This summit provides a platform for stakeholders, political party leaders, Independent National Electoral Commission, civil society organizations, scholars, and eminent persons to dialogue and strategize on critical issues that may set the tune for the 2023 general election, particularly as they relate to democratic stability of our dear country, Nigeria. The PPLPDC is committed to continue working with the political parties and IPAC, particularly in building their capacities to enable effectively perform their critical roles in Nigeria. We will continue to review our training curriculum to address emerging issues in our political system and also to make political parties better organized, more vibrant, imbued with internal democracy, devoid of violence, and high level of inclusiveness. I have no doubt in my mind that the array of distinguished personalities gathered here today, that the purpose of this summit will be fully realized. It is my earnest desire that the partnership between NIPSS-PPLPDC, political parties, the IPAC, Independent National Electoral Commission, and other stakeholders in the electoral system will continue to be sustained and strengthened in the course of consolidating democracy in Nigeria. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I wish you a very fruitful summit. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you very much, Acting Director General, National Institute. Please may we give him another round of applause. When I was establishing the protocol list, you remember that I recognized EU-SDGN implementing partners. That is the European Union's support to democratic governance in Nigeria implementing partners. May I just recognize them individually? The International Press Center, Premium Times Center for Investigative Journalism. You're welcome. European Center for Electoral Support. You're welcome. And the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center. You're welcome. At this point, we'll take two goodwill messages. First, from the project coordinator, European Center for Electoral Support. support AKS Hamza Pasi theory. You're welcome, sir.
Prof. Mahmoud Yakubu, Chairman of INEC, represented by Prof. Abdul Obulmola, dear National Commissioner. Good to see you again this afternoon. Brigadier General CFJ, Acting Director General NIPSS, thank you for your warm welcome. Dr. Leonard Nzenwa, National Chairman IPAC. Dr. Musa Omar, Chief Operating Officer, NIPSS-PPLPDC. Dear keynote speaker, Prof. Egoza Ozagere, Director General, Nigerian Institute for International Affairs. Dear Chairman of all registered political parties here present. Members of IPAC, staff and officials of NIPSS, dear facilitators and panelists of today's summit, dear EU-SDGN partners and distinguished journalists, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the European Center for Electoral Support, AKS, I am pleased to have the opportunity of delivering a goodwill message at the occasion of this important annual political parties summit organized by the Political Parties Leadership and Policy Development Center of the NIPSS, and within the context of the European Union Support to Democratic Governance in Nigeria program, the EU-SDGN program. The theme of this year's summit, Political Parties and Democratic Stability, setting the agenda for 2023 general elections, is a timely reminder of the extremely critical position political parties hold in the consolidation of Nigeria's democratic experience. I must at this point congratulate the NIPSS for sustaining this annual dialogue, which has provided a platform for constructive exchanges with political actors while making meaningful contributions towards the stability of Nigeria's political and democratic life. AKS is indeed proud to associate itself with this laudable effort. No doubt, political parties are intimate to any democracy, being primary stakeholders in the political electoral landscape. Their conduct or misconduct impact considerably on the outcome of electoral processes, and by extension, on the stability of the democratic system. By virtue of the Nigerian constitution, political parties hold the exclusive right to nominate candidates for elections into political offices. Hence, they bear this huge responsibility to be the only interface between citizens and their representative institutions. But their significance is not limited to elections alone, as they also play a critical role in contributing to the national debate on policy issues, while also serving as a lead vehicle for promoting citizens' political participation, as well as dissemination of political and electoral education. Doing so, they can be instrumental in resolving contentious political issues and setting policy directions and alternatives for government and the society. As primary stakeholders, and given their roles in the democratic society, it's imperative for political parties to recognize at all times their collective responsibility in the stability of the democratic system. Political parties must continuously demonstrate in words and in actions an abiding commitment to democratic stability, which materializes through internal democracy and inclusivity, openness and partnerships with civil society organizations, promotion of democratic values, and fair and peaceful participation into the electoral process. When citizens feel properly represented and included in the political process as a whole, and feel the benefit from the political system, they do not relent in supporting its development, and vice versa. ECS is proud to have collaborated with NIPSS within the EU-SDGN program over the last 4 years, jointly providing support to strengthen political parties and their capacities on some electoral-related issues, development of a code of conduct, inclusion of marginalized demographics, women, youth, persons with disabilities, transparency and communication, peaceful and inclusive campaigning, campaign finance regulations, to name a few. I hope that this summit will help in sensitizing participants on the overarching significance of sustaining and stabilizing the democratic system while ensuring all stakeholders effectively play their roles, particularly to the political parties for which we are convening today. Coming ahead of the 2023 general election, I'm convinced that the summit will design clear strategies for political engagements while also strengthening the commitment of political actors in carrying out their responsibilities. While wishing the resource persons and participants fruitful deliberation, let me assure the distinguished audience of the commitment of the European Centre for Electoral Support, ECS, to efforts that will build inclusive and pluralistic political party system in Nigeria through our support to the INEC, our beneficiaries from Component 1 of the EU-SDGN program, the NIPSS, and other stakeholders. I also wish to place on record ECS's sincere appreciation to the European Union for its funding support to us within the EU-SDGN program and even beyond in other projects that we are implementing across other countries in Africa. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Project Coordinator, or ECS, for the goodwill message. While the Acting Director General of NIPSS was giving his welcome remarks, the representative of our special guest of honor arrived, and it is my honor and privilege to formally introduce Dr. Adekunle Ogunmola, National Commissioner, INEC Headquarters, Abuja. He is representing the chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmoud. You are welcome, sir. We will take another goodwill message from the National Chairman, Inter-Party Advisory Council, Dr. Leonard Nzewa. IPAC Chair, you're welcome.
Let me just not go into detail with the protocol, but let me just recognize some of us here. I welcome you, Dr. Gumala, representing Professor Mahmoud. You're welcome, sir. The DG of NIPSS, General Odoya, members and faculties of NIPSS here present, the EU representatives here present, the leaders of IPAC, executive present here, the national leaders of political parties of Nigeria that has come from all parts of the country here present, the state chairman of IPAC, who have also come from different parts of this country here present. The list is endless, but every one of us has come here today. You are welcome. I just do my options is to, on behalf of the Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC, seek your understanding over the inconveniences you all have faced for the venue change of this summit from Accra to Abuja. We say we appreciate your sacrifices to attend this program despite the challenges you have encountered. The Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC, acknowledges that it is security instability that led to relocation of this great meet from Accra to Abuja. And it is this security instability that has rubbed off negatively on the lives of the people of Anambra, even as it has impacted every facet of our lives of Nigerians in various parts of trouble spots across the country, like banditry, kidnapping, farmers/herders insurrection as the fester unabated. The naked fact is that where there is high security instability, democracy and stability will suffer. We must therefore face up to the reality that our democratic efforts will be impacted by the high level of insecurity in many parts of the country. Indeed, the advent of democracy in Nigeria in 1919, 5 years after coupling of the different groupings that compose the nation by the British, was greeted with excitement and great hope. 100 years after, we are still unsure whether it's been elections from 1923 when the nation took the daring step of conducting the first local polls on September 20 that year for the Lagos Legislative Council polls with Harvard Macaulay's Nigerian National Democratic Party, NNDP, winning 3 of the 6, actually began the first major tryout in our national journey to stabilize our variant of democracy. Signally, efforts organized around and directed are building and husbanding and projecting our democracy as a stabilized one has suffered perception hemorrhage, yielding an uncontrolled imagery of stillborn, sickly, mutated growth that neither celebrates progress nor honors charitable development, but rather has thrust us out as a laggard in the League of Democratic Nations. It is not for our want of not trying enough. That is attempting to embrace and domesticate noble efforts, noble tenets of democratic practice, and recondition them to our peculiarity and benefit, but rather our collective power civic authority relationship DNA, which mostly is not only fragmented, but more often on the collision course with one another, has emptied us out, both as being acrimonious and democratically unsettled. In setting the agenda for 2023, therefore, we need to do deeper introspection and interdict ourselves sincerely, including raising the vexed question as to how our stakeholders have fared in delivering on their mandates, as well as how they hope to overcome challenges that has bestrode the political landscape in the face of mounting insecurity and voter apathy. An unappealing socio-political combo that Roger Martins of Harvard and University of Toronto view as part of the wicked problems and pushing underdeveloped and developed nations and militating against their development and growth. The urgency of the now demand that we recover our dear country and redirect her towards the right path. The tapestry of our hearts should tune us to actions that will neither expose us as ethnic egotists or religious bigots, tainted by primordial instinct of destructions. The burden of history and academicity should impel us to move en masse to rise up against forces set to bury representative democracy. We will only be true to ourselves if we honestly look ourselves in the eyeball to eyeball, speak ourselves the truth, and work for fair democratic representative government. On this note, I want to commend NIPSS. I want to commend all stakeholders that have made it possible that I come this far. Today, we were in a very strategic emergency meeting in INEC, and one of the core issues was the way forward for the Anambra election. We did cross-fertilize ideas, we did engage ourselves strongly on the way forward. One thing stands out: there is serious insecurity problem in Anambra, and that itself will impact our effort to stabilize our democracy. As we go forward in this particular session, I wish every one of us a productive engagement with the hope that at the end of this particular meet, every one of us will take home and go actually to actualize and also practicalize what you have got out today. Thank you all. May God bless every one of you.
Thank you very much, Chairman IPAC. Another round of applause for him. We have come to one of the very sensitive aspects of this ceremony, the Keynote Address. And it's my honor and privilege to invite one of the facilitators, Professor Shola Adeyanju, MNI. He is the head of advancement at NIPSS, to introduce the keynote speaker.
Thank you very much. The special guest of honor, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, permit me to introduce our keynote address speaker today, Professor Egosa Osage. Professor Osage is a leading professor of comparative politics and former Vice Chancellor, Igbinedion University, Okada. He is a former director of the Center for Peace and Conflict Studies, University of Ibadan. He is a former head of department and head of Department of Political Studies, University of Transkei, South Africa. He is a visiting professor and fellow to many universities in the United States of America, Liberia, Austria, South Africa, Sweden, United Kingdom, India, and many other countries. He is a winner of many awards, including the Best Article Award for 2004 of the African Studies Association and International Studies Association. A widely published academic, one of his many books is Crippled Giant, Nigeria Since Independence. He has published over 100 articles and books in learned international journals. You will agree with me, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, that the round peg is in the round hole with the recent appointment of our keynote address as the Director General, National Institute of International Affairs. As the saying goes, behind every successful man is a solid woman. I recognize the presence of the wife of our keynote address speaker, Mrs. Veronica Osage. I recognize you. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to invite to the podium Professor Egosa Osage to deliver the keynote address. Professor.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, the Acting Director General of NIPSS, the Chair of INEP, the Chair of IPAC, and the EU great partner that we have here. Distinguished colleagues, and if I call you politicians, it would have a different connotation. So we'll just say leaders of political parties. I think that's different. Very good. But later we will see there's a difference between being a leader of political party and being a politician. So that's very well said. Let me congratulate NIPSS on the convening of this summit. It's a critical summit. You might say this is one of the things that we need to do as we count down to 2023. Already there are tensions, we have dissensions, we have arguments, we have debates. We have people who even now say, will 2023 be a real year for us? I'm sure part of the reason we're gathered here is to ensure that it will be a real year and we will surprise every person, including those that are doubters of what lies ahead of us. What I want to do today is to encourage us along the path of the very fragile terrain that we're dealing with, the terrain of democratic politics as it relates to political parties. I want to have as a point of departure the characterization of the Nigerian society as a divided society. Some even say that it is a deeply divided society. What's a divided society? Divided society is a society that is highly politicized, highly politicalized, to such an extent that every little disagreement becomes a trigger for tearing down, the foundations of all the things that would normally have made for our coming together, including, if you like, the selection of footballers for the national football team. Now that's how deeply divided societies can be. A long time ago, students of comparative politics had argued that in deeply divided societies, democracy tends to be unstable. Is that there is a diminution of public goods in deeply divided societies. And because the public goods are always in short supply, there's an acute sense of rivalry and contestation over the little that everyone has to struggle for, especially where the transfers of public goods are based on ethnic affiliations and majoritarianism. Now, these become very critical considerations. Now, that's not all that explains this. Elections in deeply divided societies also tend to be more than your regular, routine, regular elections. They are what a long time ago an American political scientist referred to as critical elections. So all elections in divided societies tend to assume the character of being very critical. Critical elections are elections that have a way of reinventing the character of the politics in such a manner that you can have not just, a strengthening of the differentiation, but also a warlike approach to things like elections. For the reasons that I've said about the short supply of public goods. So, I want us to keep those two things at the back of our minds, because now we are going to discuss the important role of political parties, even in those societies that are said to be deeply divided, and societies where, as we have. In the 1960s, in national cohesion or national unity, the fear was, if those societies are open and you allow for free will mobilization, chances are that you will then create events for the expressions and the articulations of the divisions, within the societies. And what does that mean? In federal theory, it is said that in a divided society, political parties are the intermediaries between the centrifugal forces, that is the forces of division, and the forces of unity. And what political parties do is that they articulate those different tendencies that make for the division of the state. So you see, that makes political parties in divided societies, for federal theory, very critical. But there's something else. Now, it is said that political parties have a tendency of having themselves reinvented and reproduced socially as entities that represent ethnic identities or religious identities or regional identities. Now, this made political parties a very key subject for students of comparative politics in modernization theory, and they were saying, using the language of systems analysis, how can we stabilize? The kind of talk about democratic stability today will take us back to the literature of the 60s and 70s, when people looked at structural functionalism, people looked at systems theory, and the question was, how do you ensure that the system remains stable? They recognized that there were two kinds of functions that would make the system stable or not. There were the U functions. These are the positive functions. The positive functions that reinforce the cohesion of such societies. Then there are the dysfunctional intermediaries. And many of those dysfunctionalities were associated with agents of division. And therefore, they would say, if you want to make political parties useful to the process of stability and cohesion, you better ensure that they move from being dysfunctional to becoming U-functional. Now, in Africa, this debate took on the following character. For a long time, there was disbelief in the feasibility of multi-party democracy in Africa. It was argued that African multi-diversities, the kinds of ethnic differentiations that we have, made multi-party democracy inappropriate for African circumstances. For a long time, we had the argument about one-party rule. There was even an attempt to have in the social sciences what was called the African theory of democracy. And, people said, if you wanted political parties to play the kinds of roles that political scientists had set out for them, you needed them to be national in character. And therefore, you would cite the example of the Congress Party in India. You will cite the example of, the TANU, the Tanganyika or Tanzanian African National Union in Tanzania. You will cite the example of the CPP in Ghana. All of these things, the argument were national coalitions that ensured that the dissipating energies of centrifugal mobilizations were kept at the minimum. So, when again, beginning from the 1980s and through the 1990s, we had to embrace a new form of neoliberal, approach to democratization. And now the accent was on multi-party democracy. The arguments again went back, and the debates came back again. Can multi-party politics work in Africa? This is where we are today. And there were those who said, well, if you have multi-party democracy, you must have the counterpart that they define as multi-ethnic democracy. What is multi-ethnic democracy? This is a kind of democracy that does not proceed only on the basis of free will voting. It is a kind of democracy that creates, other instrumentalities for reconciliation and inclusiveness, and ensures that all accesses, all opportunities are free and fair. And this is the kind of democracy that, sorry, I will be mentioning names that appear a little abstract, but it's in the course of the presentation, because they throw light on the things that we do. There's a professor called Aaron Lightfat, and Lightfat has a jaw-breaking concept called consociationalism. Consociationalism is a kind of democracy that tries to moderate the effects of majoritarian rule. And it says that in all multi-ethnic societies, especially those that are divided, what you require would be instrumentalities that allow you to balance the forces beyond what free-willing elections can do. And so, for instance, they say we can have things like proportional representation. as an electorate. What that does is it's the opposite of the first past the post system. It's a list system that allows political parties to be as inclusive can be. So you can have that kind of negotiation. You can have what they call elite consensus, because that's key, to the things that we do in the name of cohesion. So that even within political parties, you can have coalitions. You can have the quota system, the kind of, ethnic arithmetical formula that assures affirmative action. We have it in Nigeria, the federal character principle. And now, we have added many more things that students of constitutionalism like zoning. So when you say zoning, it means that, there's a rotation, of the election tickets and so on. Now, all of these things, these people would argue, beginning at the lifetime, that the kind of democratic stability that you can have in divided societies is not the one that liberal democracy only can provide for. You need some additional instrumentalities that would ensure that these societies continue to be together. Now that's the challenge. Let's look at Nigeria. Nigeria has followed all of these developments in the literature. We've had our own times. We've had multi-party system all the time, but multi-party system of two very essential characters. One would be multi-party systems that tend to become two tendencies. Even if you had, as we had at the time, 92 political parties, we still could tell, that there were two tendencies. And this time I reminded of what happened in some of the elections we had in the states. Some of those parties had candidates for the gubernatorial elections that found themselves campaigning for candidates of, the major political parties. I mean, you see what that means. It's a reinforcement of those tendencies. And so a long time ago, when we were dealing with, how exactly we fashion out the kind of political system and political party system that will be appropriate for our country, we came to the conclusion that because of these tendencies, we should manufacture political parties. And we differentiated them and tried to teach the world how you can build from the top. We gave one a little to the left and the one a little to the right. But that experiment didn't quite work. We even experimented with the possibility of a no-party system, a zero-party system, the kind that, Museveni's Uganda tried to practice at the point. Because we have become very suspicious, of the kinds of things that political parties do. Given our experience in the First Republic and what they also called our experience that showed we haven't learned our lessons in the Second Republic. And so they said, what of a zero-party option? But thank God we didn't go that way. We have a multi-party system. Now, in arranging the multi-party system or configuring it, there was something that the framers of our Constitution and those who were our political engineers were very, very clear about. They didn't want parties that had those kinds of things, the tendencies we had in the past, i.e., parties that reflected ethnic, religious, and regional differences. So they now decided that in our Constitution, we would only provide for parties that are national. And they went ahead and spelled out, both in the Constitution and the Electoral Act, the conditionalities, the specificities, the qualifications that you would have to operate as a political party. One of them is you must have your headquarters in Abuja. Another is that you must have an executive that reflects the federal character of Nigeria. Another is that you must have offices in no fewer than two-thirds of the states of the federation, and so on. Now, all of those rules are there, but the one that I also like is the one in Section 225 of the 1999 Constitution that talks about how political parties and their programs and manifestos should reflect the constitutional provisions for the fundamental objectives of state policy and those things that drive us. So political parties are expected to be the drivers of a country that has lofty ideals, the kinds that you will find in our national objectives, our social objectives, our economic objectives. We want to have a country, where there's a sense of belonging on the part of everyone, and so on. So, we led that trajectory, and today, many countries, including Rwanda and to some extent Ghana, have copied some things from how we make political parties a constitutional party. Now, we can ask the question, has that taken us where we always dreamed we wanted to be? You are the people that speak. You lead the political parties. You can answer those questions. But I think that our experience would suggest to us that there is a lot more that we need to do with our political parties if they are to meet the ideals that even the constitutional framers had in mind. For instance, in all the elections we've had since 1999, we have continued to demonstrate in very, very abundant ways the fact that we remain a deeply divided society. Even if our political parties have become national parties, they are still, at the mercy of the deep divisions. And that is one critical thing that has affected what we want to regard as internal party democracy, which we all share. We know the things that have gone on within the parties. But there is a tendency that I like to highlight as one of the tendencies that, have crystallized from the national character and the attempt to insist that all of our parties must be national in character. This is the very mysterious factor that has gone into elections in Nigeria, which we call the federal might. I'm sure we're all familiar with federal might. In all elections that have gone on, even at the local government level, everyone talks about the myth of the federal might. And this federal might, for me, has many, many departments and branches and manifestations. One of them is that candidate selection is subject to federal might because the national executives of parties, want to play the dominant role in determining who can run and who cannot run, even in state governments. And we found that, in the most recent past, even in party primaries, you had different kinds of lists and so on. But what has always prevailed is the national. The national executive has always prevailed. We hear that in some parties, they say a state has the right to choose how it is going to vote. But the national executive has its own preferences. Those kinds of things create problems. Within the parties also, in the name of federal might, we find that there is a tendency to insist only on the powers that would come from the federal capital. And this reinforces, the problems that we have with the political parties. In a federal system, you would expect that the political parties also have things that actually resonate the federal tradition, the federal culture. That state branches would be strong and local branches would be strong, able to exercise some bits of autonomy and able to do things that would not be overruled by the central organization of the party. But because of federal might, we have not been able to. The other thing about federal might is they say this is what determines the outcome of elections. So you as a candidate, as a party, and so on, if you are not properly aligned with this mysterious federal might, chances are that you are not going to be able to win an election. What will all these things mean as we look to 2023? They suggest first is that people think, that 2023 would be another opportunity to find how we can, all of these debates that have gone on and are going on, they think that in 2023 we have to see how we can resolve them. And resolving them will mean deepening our differences and becoming even more divided than we presently are. That is the indication that has come from everywhere. So I think that our political parties need to be reminded that the stability of our democratic situation lies totally at their footsteps and their goals. INEC can go so far, and INEC has done so well in trying to create a level playing field, in trying to reduce the critical character of our elections that would make them less civil war type elections. INEC has tried to reduce the tendencies towards electoral violence. Because even before elections happen, the parties believe that you cannot win freely and fairly. You need several other things in addition to be able to win. And these are the things that they claim usually win elections. One of them, of course, as if you didn't know, is money. You must have a lot of money. And INEC has tried to address these kinds of issues, the funding of parties, and the spending that goes into elections. We talk about the inclusivity of the electoral process. Young people are saying, how do we get money to contest elections? Women are saying, we are systematically excluded. How do we come into this frame? Now, I want to suggest to us that as we approach 2023, we must, all of us, know that if the dynamics of our internal operations within the parties don't become themselves democratized, we can jeopardize the future of 2023. Because the evidence suggests right now that the parties are going to unravel if we are not careful. That we are going to have splits and more splits within parties. And this one, I have heard, I'm sure you know, a professor called Jibo Ibrahim. Jibo Ibrahim argues that it would appear that the only reason political parties exist in Nigeria is for the purpose of contesting elections, which really has to be something that requires restructuring, in our body politic. And that's why it doesn't make any difference at all whether you are in party A or party B. There's really little to choose from between the parties or amongst them. So what people end up doing is they are in party A this morning, in the afternoon they're in party B, and in the evening they're in party C. I think that something has to be done to check this spate of carpet crossing. That's what it used to be called in Parliament in England. If you cross from one side of the divide to the other side. But what we're doing now is far beyond carpet crossing. People get elected on the platform of particular parties, and by the next time they belong to other parties, as if those who voted for them really didn't know what they were doing. So I think that parties need to crystallize their identities. Parties need to address issues of socio-economic development. Parties need to address issues of security. The party voices have been louder in their absence than in their presence. Today, we have so much to talk about insecurity in our country, but the political parties have simply disappeared. Even with all the insecurity that we have, the primary focus for many political parties is 2023. So I think there's something between now and 2023 that parties have to be concerned about. And you know, I would hope that when we have a summit like this, that kind of summit should address not just the elections, but also the roles that political parties as mobilization agencies can play in helping to quieten some of these forces that are threatening even 2023 itself. I also think that our parties must make themselves more visible in answering questions that presently are unanswered. The questions about the restoration of social infrastructure in our country. You know, see, today it would appear that it is the individual that matters more than the party. Now, individuals cannot animate the parties, they cannot embody the parties. They can only reflect the parties. I think that also needs to be addressed. As we approach 2023, I would expect that the parties must recognize that when INEC in its wisdom has pruned down the number from 92 to, is it 16 or 17 we have? 18, from 92 to 18. Those 18 parties must count. Those 23 will be different. We have to reduce the tendency that we have to pretend that there are only two parties or two political tendencies in the country today. Those two political parties are not in themselves, they may be necessary, but they are not sufficient to explain the things that require inclusivity. Just to make the point that looking through here, and so women who are members of political parties would have a legitimate claim to say that this summit, you know, was organized in a way to systematically exclude them, because not many of them are here. So, in that inclusion, the political parties must address those kinds of issues. Let me begin to close. If the public goods that we have, and that's the note on which I started, continue to remain in short supply, then the political parties themselves must know that what is prior to everything, including elections, will be suggestions on how we can expand and increase the scope of public goods. It is not simply about access alone, but about what we must do to ensure that public goods are produced. Politics is not about the mentality of transfer of public goods and about what people can get just because you have won an election. Politics is about what the politicians and the elites can do to ensure that productivity is the key, you know, to national emancipation. And if we insist on productivity, then of course we can address the deficits of public goods. So finally, let me thank you. We thank all those that have listened to me. Let me suggest to us that political parties have a key role to play in reducing the scope of our divisions and our dividedness. And they can only do this if they become alive to the kinds of fears and threats that they themselves have helped to give substance to in the things that they are doing. Politics is not a do or die business. Is that not what we said? Nigerians thought of politics in a manner that was more reflective of what I just said, but not in a do and die manner. We had a political party whose name was "You Chop, I Chop." You know, and that was a party that we had a long time ago. In South Africa, they have a party they call Keep It Straight and Simple, KISS, the KISS party. Now, these parties actually represent tendencies that are not captured in the mainstream. And I think, you know, that we must, all of us, know that the country is looking up to political parties for the things that we will do. Part of the tragedy that I find is that even when we have summits like this, the parties that are key to the things that should be happening and that we should be talking to find a way of not attending such summits. And so what you find are, elements of the minority parties and so on. So at the end of the day, it is like the minority parties constitute themselves a civil society constituency, that then tells the major political parties what we think they should be doing. I think we must all be part of this process, and we must tell ourselves the truth, knowing that whatever we do would have implications today and tomorrow and for 2023. The parties must be resolved that never again would we come to a question of whether multi-party politics is appropriate for us. We have resolved, we have passed that. But the point is, we must keep that hope alive. And not because we want to be prescriptive, not because we want to be normative, not because we want to say we should do things this way rather than the other ways, but because we know that empirically the whole country would become even far more divided if we don't get our politics right. I thank you for listening.
We'd like to thank our keynote speaker. He said political parties have a role to play in healing our dividedness as a nation. Please, can we give him another round of applause? Thank you very much. Please, just an announcement. Mr. Williams Moses of YPP. Mr. Williams Moses of YPP. Please, your attention is needed at the registration desk. And then we have a lost or found. It's yours. Okay. Please come approach me with proof of ownership and sign it. All right. We will now take the last item on the, second to last item on the welcome aspect of this ceremony. Of this program, we would like to invite the representative of the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, in the person of Dr. Adekunle Ogunmola, National Commissioner, INEC headquarters, to make his address. You're welcome, sir.
The Acting Director General, NIPSS, the Chairman of IPAC, and the Keynote Address speaker. Distinguished leaders of political parties are present. Other personalities are present. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here this afternoon to represent the chairman of INEC in person of Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, who would have wished to be here, but as you all know, we have a lot of assignments on our hands right now. But the chairman cherishes the relationship between INEC and NIPSS, and that was why on Wednesday he invited me and told me that although we have a lot of assignments on our hands, but we must be represented at this occasion. And that is why he has asked me to come here this afternoon to represent him. He also cherishes the fact that you have made him the special guest of honor. Ladies and gentlemen, as an aside, I want to say that it is my wish that as political party leaders and politicians, we strive to ensure that in future, this type of summits become unnecessary. I hope you understand what I'm saying. And to my mind, that would be another way of summarizing what the guest speaker has told us. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to represent the Honorable Chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, at the 2021 Annual Political Parties and Stakeholders Summit, organized by the Political Parties Leadership and Policy Development Center of the National Institute of Policy and Strategic Studies. The Commission notes that this annual event has over the years evolved into a significant forum that avails political parties and other stakeholders the opportunity to assess the state of political parties in Nigeria and their capacity to play the critical roles of not only providing alternative policy options, but also integrating various socio-political interests. I am pleased to note that the themes of the 2021 summit include an appraisal of inter-party democracy and an assessment of the status of inclusivity and political participation in Nigeria. These are critical areas that are also of special interest to the Commission. The Commission remains committed to supporting the enhancement of the capacity of political parties in deepening internal democracy for the greater good of political stability in Nigeria. Additionally, the Commission has established the Gender and Inclusivity Department to, among other issues, support political parties to enhance their prospects by encouraging the participation of politically disadvantaged groups, including women, the youth, and persons with disabilities. We therefore look forward to when NIPSS will share the resolutions and the diagnostic review of this 2021 summit with the Commission towards longer-term collaboration among all stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, before I conclude my brief remarks, permit me to, on behalf of the Honorable Chairman INEC, commend NIPSS and the European Union in supporting political parties towards promoting pluralism, tolerance, internal democracy, and equality of political parties. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you productive deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's applaud the INEC chair again. We are at the end of this opening ceremony. I'd like to invite the man at the center of all of this, stringing the activities together, the Chief Operating Officer, NIPSS Political Parties and Leadership Development Center, Dr. Musa Umar, to bring a vote of thanks. Dr. Musa Umar.
The special guest of honor, the LPD National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, our distinguished keynote speaker, IPAC chairman, and program coordinator ECAS, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me apologize sincerely for shifting the program from Oka in Anambra State to Abuja after consultation with IPAC and security agencies. And we deemed it necessary for us to move the program to Abuja. And not only that, yesterday we had to change the time for when this program was to start from 10 a.m. today to 3 p.m. And in spite of that, you are patient with us, and you are able to be here. We want to sincerely thank all of you. Our first appreciation goes to Almighty God for the gift of life, for even the privilege for us to travel from far and near to be here for this particular program. We thank God for that. Let me sincerely appreciate the special guest of honor, the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, who is ably represented by Dr. Adetunde Obumana, the National Commissioner. We thank you very much for representing the chairman. And I want to commend the chairman and all his team for all the effort they are making to ensure credible, free and fair elections in Nigeria. And we pray that God will see you through. My sincere appreciation goes to the Acting Director General of NIPSS and his management for unflinching support to the center, guiding us and also supporting all our activities in the center. We are most grateful, sir. Thank you very much. And of course, a big thank you to our keynote speaker, who has already set the tone for the discourse that we'll be having between now and tomorrow. And also to specially appreciate the wife, not only did she release him to be in this summit, but also ensuring that she accompanied him to be here to deliver this. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. A special thanks to IPAC chairman and his ESCO. We work very closely with IPAC, and we enjoy the kind of partnership we have under your leadership. Thank you very much. And of course, our partner, Anthem, thank you very much. Whenever we call upon you, you're always there for us. I want to thank you and all your team. Thank you, Dr. Siaka, for coming together with Hamza. A special thanks to all the chairmen and leaders of political parties for making time to be in this very important meeting. We thank you very much. We thank all the state IPAC chairmen for coming. I know you travel from Prague and you are here. And I assure you, at the end of this summit, you will go back with testimony that indeed you came, you saw, and things in your state will change. Thank you for coming. Let me also use this opportunity to appreciate the EU under the EU-SDGN project for supporting the center to work closely with political parties. We sincerely appreciate you for all the support. We thank all our EU-SDGN implemented partners that are here. Thank you for coming. And of course, I will not forget to appreciate all the NIPSS staff for all working round the clock to ensure the success of this summit. Thank you all, and God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Musa Umar, Chief Operating Officer of the Political Parties Leadership and Policy Development Center, NIPSS. We have come to the end of the opening ceremony. After the national anthem, we'll have a group photograph, and it will be in front here. Please ensure that your face and your voice is captured or are captured. All right? There may be a reward for that. And immediately after the photograph, you please return to your seat because we are going right into the second session. As you can see, our timing is really critical, and we do not want to keep you too long here. I've also been asked to let you know that there will be refreshments at the end of the session. So you do not need to rush off anywhere. We're taking care of you all around. Thank you very much. So at the count of 2, we will take it. 1, 2. Arise, O compatriots, Nigeria's called away to serve our
labor of our heroes shall never be in vain. To serve with heart and mind, one day shall proudly freedom, peace and unity.
Thank you. Good photograph.